Hi lovelies, it's Claire, and I've seen a ton of these picnic baskets online that unfold into little tables because I'm a picnic lover and the Pinterest algorithm has me in a chokehold. So I just knew that I had to make my own version, and let me show you guys how I made this. I decided to stick with the same overall structure I was seeing online of this sort of trapezoidal basket shape that unfolds in the middle, and just kind of went from there. So to get this thing really going, I decided to start with cardboard prototyping. If you thought I was going to 3D model this project, you are just out of your mind. Cardboard prototyping is something I've actually never done before, but I figured it was the best way that I could see things come together without wasting too much time or resources. I did a couple iterations with the cardboard and spent a good chunk of time just figuring out all the components I would need and how everything would connect together. I was trying to find a shape that hit my main design criteria, which was a large volume, a decent sized surface area for the table portion, a good height for a seated user, be as lightweight as possible without compromising strength, and of course just being aesthetically pleasing. After my first round of prototyping, I realized that I could have a much lower weight by using these woven wicker sides instead of wood. So essentially, I just needed to create a frame without sides. This frame consists of a base, 4 profile pieces that unfold, supports to connect these, legs, the handle, and a couple other parts just to hold everything together. The biggest part of the design was the side profiles, and there were a ton of considerations I put into designing these. These straight lines obviously create that flat tabletop shape when it's unfolded. The angle and dimensions line up with the very specific trigonometry for unfolding. The sort of bulbous shape at the top becomes this little heart decal when it's put together. This big soft curve reduces the stress concentration near the handle portion, and I also removed these little notches so that the corners wouldn't collide during unfolding. You'll also notice the grain direction goes up and down on this, and that's because wood is made of these cellulose and hemicellulose fiber bundles that are held together by lignin, and it's a lot easier to break the wood between these fiber bundles as opposed to breaking straight through them. So the grain direction going up and down was a decision to make the handle portion less resistant to breakage. Once I finished the profile design and all the prototyping, I was able to make my build plan, get the dimensions of all the wood components, and then figure out the hardware that would hold it all together. This project needed 2 latches, 4 hinges, 8 L brackets, and so many screws. And then I just kind of had to trust the process. I landed on pine wood for this project because it's really easy to work with, it's a soft wood, so it's very lightweight, and I knew it would be strong enough for my purposes. So off I went to Home Depot with my little cart to terrorize all the commuters on the public transit. I got started with the profile portions first and worked with a template I made out of construction paper. I traced it onto my plank, and then I went to the bandsaw to cut it out. This was my first time using the bandsaw since I was trained on it, so I was actually just so shocked at how congruent everything came out. The trickiest part with the bandsaw is you can only make straight cuts with it, so for curved portions of the design, you kind of just have to take out little chunks at a time until you get the shape that you want. But I honestly love the bandsaw. I think it's my new favorite tool at the wood shop. Then I had to get to work making all of the smaller components. This was mostly just cutting things to size with the miter saw or the table saw. Any funkier shapes than a plain rectangle were rounded on the router table or also cut with the bandsaw. Now, as a whole, this part was pretty straightforward, except for the hinges. The hinges on this piece were kind of the bane of my existence. I originally thought I could have 2 boards the same height connect along their edge, sort of like this. But when you actually look at the hinge, you can see that one side is a step down from the other, meaning in order to make the tabletop flat, I would need to cut down these profile supports so they would align with the bottom of the base and the hinge, which meant completely redoing most of my trig. I had to cut these pieces by their width, which I used the bandsaw for. I set up this fence and pressed the piece along its width onto the blade, pushing it with a push stick and just trying to keep everything as straight as possible with even speed and pressure. After a couple days, I was able to bring the project plan into reality, which was just so exciting. I was so happy to get to this part of the build, but I think this was when it really dawned on me just how difficult the assembly was going to be. And if you're thinking about this and wondering how it's even gonna become a picnic basket, frankly, I was kind of wondering the same thing. But, at this point, we simply have to keep going, so now we're at assembly. I started off by connecting the hinging supports to the profiles, and this part was incredibly tricky. To be fair, I didn't use any measuring tools or rulers or anything like that. I honestly just figured that it would be a lot easier to just hold everything together and figure out exactly where each piece would need to be. So I decided to just hold and tape things into place, mark where everything would connect in pencil, and then assemble that way. And surprisingly, this did not turn out terrible. Same thing with the rest of the assembly. Mostly it was just holding things together, marking it, drilling a pilot hole, gluing, and then actually screwing everything together. There were a couple casualties during the build process, but most of it was salvageable, and eventually I had a fully functional frame, and this was so exciting. This took me many weeks, and I just love the way this thing unfolds. I think it just looks so satisfying. Once the base was good and sturdy, I was able to weave the basket portions. I used this flat edge banding and just went to town on this, just weaving like an absolute madwoman. One trick I learned from weaving also is if you wet the material you're using, it makes it a lot more bendable and just a lot easier to work with. After that, I added some slats to support the woven portions, and then I connected it all together with a spray adhesive and these cute little daisy nails, and the base of the basket was done. And as exciting as that part is, we are not done yet, because we have to make it look pretty. I used the hearts that I cut out on the bandsaw and sanded them on the belt sander to create these geometric hearts, which I cut in half and added to the handles. And these are just so cute when the basket comes together. I love these things. I spent quite a bit of time figuring out how I wanted to bring this basket together aesthetically, but ultimately I decided on these little strawberry vines to really embrace the cottagecore vibes. I sketched out the general shapes with pencil and then used acrylic paint to bring it to life, and I just love these little things. I think it came out exactly how I pictured it in my head. It was super fun to do, and I think it really brings together the vibe, the wholesome cottagecore loveliness that I was going for. After painting, I also decided to cover these screwed edges with the same edge banding to kind of bring everything together and cover some more of the hardware. And I also added these little feet at the bottom so the bottom of the basket doesn't actually touch the ground. I gave everything a nice coat of spar urethane, and then that was it! Ta-da! I am absolutely obsessed with this basket. I think it looks adorable, it's so fun to use, and it's very satisfyingly mechanical. It was a huge challenge to put this together, but truly just a labor of love, and it came out 1,000 times better than I could have ever imagined. And I think it's time for a picnic, wouldn't you say? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.